Welcome to this new episode of your podcast, where together we'll find between discussions the space to generate doubts about what we have always learned. My name is Jason Gonzalez, and this is Pocaluzstudio, your space to understand the world in a creative way. Welcome everyone to this episode. We are coming back after a small break to start this new year with new energy. Today, we're going for a small trip together, and no, not that kind of trip yet. We are going back in time to remind us how we become social and thinking animals, survivors and fighters for our destiny, believers in religions and followers of traditions for centuries. Do we know exactly where we come from? Where are you from? Have you feel uncomfortable with this question before? Do you think that actually is a reason to make decisions between us like a species? Or why are we always insisting on prevailing and generating eternal life, if at the end we are just sapiens? We are going to start from the background according with the theory of evolution, with simple questions and reflections going through. If it's worth it or not to ask that person next to us where they come from, or why we check color skin of the people. Why are we here right now? Just consequence of the sapiens evolution in different expressions. All the wars around the world in the past and the present are just a creation of our existence. But you know what? Outside of the planet, there doesn't exist a money or economy, religion, beliefs, democracy, and I can keep talking about all of our creations for hours. But a lot of these creations are just excuses for a fake balance. Unfortunately, in the middle of the fake balance and democracy, a lot of innocent people die every day, like in Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, etc. Why are we killing each other? We are supposed to be sapiens and we have better things to offer to the world. Welcome to the dark side today, and I hope you are ready for this. I have been rereading part of this magic book called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and I'm doing this reading because I want to connect important facts of our evolution with the present that we have right now. So, let's start. Cooperation has been the key word for sapiens centuries and decades. A simple example is that raising children requires help from other family members and neighbors. It takes a tribe to raise a human. The human babies are helpless, dependent for many years on their elders for sustenance, protection, and education. In the book, it is highlighted that this fact has contributed greatly to both humankind's extraordinary social abilities and to its unique social problems. In addition, humans can be spoon, stretched, and shaped with a surprising degree of freedom, and this is why today we can educate our children to become Christian or Buddhist, capitalist or socialist, warlike or peace-loving. We can assume that we use the same cooperation between countries and nations to build up projects for technology purposes, care of the environment, business, economic alliances, political assistance, etc. I think it is worth asking ourselves how things might have turned out had the Neanderthals or another species survived alongside Homo sapiens. What kind of cultures, societies, and political structures would have emerged in a world where several different human species coexist? That's crazy just to imagine, because possibly none of these existence can be the same system that we have. How, for example, will religious faiths have unfolded? Will the book of Genesis have declared that Neanderthals descend from Adam and Eve? Will Jesus have died for the sins of another species? Sounds insane, but we never think about it. So, what's the necessity to kill people just for religions and beliefs? If we are the consequence of systems that just recreate what we think it is, but maybe it's not. What we really know is the secret of the Sapiens. We conquered the world thanks above all to its unique language, which is the basic vocal linguistic ability. We are able to explain everything that we know, from adventures of Alice in Wonderland to the paradoxes of physics. In the same way, thousands of generations communicate everything, and it is easy to understand the knowledge. We can connect a limited number of sounds and signs to produce an infinite number of sentences, each with a distinct meaning. According to this, we are social animals that need social cooperation and vocal language to secure our reproduction. Additionally, the important clue to understand the whole context is the cognitive revolution, where Homo sapiens acquired the ability to say, the lion is the guardian spirit of the tribe. As far as we know, only sapiens can talk about entire kinds of entities that they have never been seen, touched, or smelled. Noah Harari gives an excellent example about this. You could never convince a monkey to give you a banana by promising limitless bananas after death in monkey heaven. I know, sounds funny. Fiction is something that we share like a species. We can webcam on myths of Aboriginal Australians and nationalist myths of modern states. Such myths give sapiens the unprecedented ability to cooperate flexibly in large numbers. That's why we rule the world, because through this fiction, we can cooperate with strangers, which means that we are living in fiction all the time. What do you think about this? We call it people's collective imagination. David Brooks, in the New York Times, describes the imagination like this. This is what he says. Well, one way of looking at it is that every waking second, your brain is bombarded with a buzzing, plumbing, and fusion of colors, shapes, and movements. Imagination is the capacity to make associations among all these bits of information and to synthesize them into patterns and concepts. When you walk, say, into a coffee shop, you don't see an array of surfaces, lights, and angles. Your imagination instantly coalesces all that into an image, coffee shop. Neuroscientists have come to appreciate how fantastically complicated and subjective this process of creating mental images really is. You may think perception is a simple objective process of taking in the world, and cognition is a complicated process of thinking about it. If we compare how the imagination was used for centuries, we had a white, perfect, and sexy, attractive Jesus with blue eyes and excellent tan skin. But someone had the imagination to paint it according to the ideal Son of God. Why not dark skin? Now, we can see that the same imagination can produce an excellent pattern to communicate for generations. Any idea? And you know what's the even more successful? We're still thinking that Jesus is that white and sexy guy with blue eyes. Good job with the imagination. However, telling stories is not easy. The difficulty lies not in telling the story, but in convincing everyone else to believe it. Much of history revolves around these questions. How does one convince millions of people to believe particular stories about gods, nations, or limited liability companies? Yet when it succeeds, it gives Sapiens immense power because it enables millions of strangers to cooperate and work towards common goals. Just try to imagine, just for a second, how difficult it would have been to create states or churches or legal system if we could speak only about things that really exist, such as rivers, trees, and lions. Also, we have to understand that the most sapiens bands live on the road, roaming from place to place in search of food. Their movements were influenced by the changing seasons, the annual migration of animals, and the growth cycles of plants. They usually travel back and forth across the same home territory, in an area of between several dozen and many hundreds of square miles. Why are we talking all of this context about sapiens and our origins? You know that we have to understand the huge amount of information that we have in our heads. Creation of our societies, countries, and the background of every culture of the world. But in general, we are the same human species like sapiens. And I want to understand two points of views when someone asks where we come from. So, the first scenario, I was drinking a beer with one of my friends in Brisbane, Australia, and we went out asking for a single cigarette. Just to start conversation, we asked a guy who was close to us this simple question: "Hey, where are you from?" He reacted in an unexpectedly disappointed way, asking back why we were asking. We were really surprised because he took it in a racist way, even if we didn't have that purpose, because it's a normal way to be social in Australia, especially with the Australian population, which is really multicultural. So, just to try to understand this reaction, I did a small research about it. In the portal sent Harvard Business Review, Rakshita Arni Ravishankar, I'm sorry for this pronunciation, it's kind of complicated for me, about he talks about this uncomfortable question for some people, he says. Here is the problem. For those of us who already feel different in a given space, being asked where we're from carries implicit assumptions about our race, caste, ethnicity, nationality, etc. Often, it translates into, "Oh, you don't seem to belong here." It validates existing beliefs about social identities and can be quite patronizing. For instance, following up the questions with, "Oh, of course," "Oh, yes, yeah, you do like you're from this country," can force people into neat categories of race, gender, nationality without acknowledging the nuances of the person's identity. None of us have singular identities, and most of us belong in many places. People can belong in different geographies, cultures, and identities at the same time. Most of us don't identify with markers we were born with. Rakshita described four important points according to his research with colleges. So, firstly, there is a fine line between curiosity and microaggression. For Stefano McGee, a college based in the US, his last name has always garnered a lot of attention. Say, my first name is Italian, the last name is Irish, and my paternal family is black, based in Alabama. So when I introduce myself to someone, the follow-up question usually is about where I'm from. However, he doesn't mind. In fact, it wasn't until he was 25 that he learned about the origins of his last name. During the time of slavery in USA, slaves often took the last name of the slave owner, he explains. Somewhere in my history, my ancestors were held by an owner named McGee. McGee finds the question fascinating and wonders if there are others like him, with similar stories about their roots. However, he adds that he is always mindful of the context of the question while he is answering it. I'm usually okay if a friend asks me that, but it doesn't make sense in formal work situations. Why? Because a question about someone's identity can be a microaggression, especially at work. A microaggression is a behavior or action, whether accidentally or purposefully, that solely determines someone's identity by playing into the stereotypes or historic biases or social groups. While the question may not be born out of malicious intent, it can have a serious consequence or impact on the people. It is directed towards in the context of racism, anti-immigration, and anti-minority sentiments. This curiosity about someone's perceived race, ethnicity, and nationality can be quite damaging. Secondly, it reduces people to a representative of a larger group. Richard Rai, a former college who lives in India, explains that asking this question can often stereotype people. When someone tells you they are from this country and your response is, "Oh, I love this country. Food, music, movies, characters," it reduces their complex identities to your limited understanding of a social identity group they belong to. That's harmful because it turns an individual into a representative for a specific culture or identity. And that can be really exhausting for the individual on the receiving end. This often looks like, do you have any idea on how we can celebrate that kind of festival at work? Or what's going on with this news affecting the group? Yeah, this can put pressure on the individual to be responsible to educate others about a specific culture or identity, which turns out to be a lot of work, work that person asking should really be doing. In the third place, it's the intent behind the question that matters. Maria Ortega, a college from Mexico City, says that asking about people's backgrounds can be an opportunity to build an honest, trusting relationship. But it all depends on how you ask the questions and what you say next. I think that's pretty important. The tone, the facial expressions, and the follow up questions, all of that tells me what is the person really wants to know. She says, for instance, you wouldn't just ask a college if they have kids, says. But in a conversation, if they mention or talk about their kids, then you can build that conversation from there. Ortega uses a test to gauge the intentions of the people who put it in a tight spot. I always wait for the next question someone asks after they hear me where I'm from, she says. That tells her whether the questioner is really interested in getting to know her or whether they are looking to confirm their own judgments or unconscious bias. If it's the latter, it's a macroaggression. In the fourth place, it is a reflection of the 16 unequal power structures. It's also about who is asked and who gets to ask these questions. It is likely that many of us may be okay with asking our juniors or college about their background. But how many of us have actually asked a senior executive a similar question? Asked Rye. To her, it also reflects power relations between individuals. Questions about our last names, looks, accents, and culture may reinforce and magnify difference between a marginalized community and the majority demographic, which can trigger feelings of alienation. It made me realize, and he still talking about this is it made me realize, and I'm ashamed to admit, that the only people I have ever asked these questions to have been people of color. Often I have been perplexed, even if I don't experience it, when another South Asian friend has identified as a British or American. So here's a question Ray nudged us to ask ourselves. Why am I even asking this question? What do I hope to gain from this specific question, as opposed to, say, asking someone about their favorite holiday, destination, or music band? Pretty important points, I think so. So now for myself, searching the opposite perspective, if it was okay to ask the general question, where are you from? I didn't find too much information, but J.P. Brammer, a cut contributor on author of the Hola Papi column, says this. If it comes up naturally, or if you are exchanging histories, then it's fine. But people who are frequently authoring another culture will definitely know when you are just trying to sniff out their ethnicity, because they've been asked that question thousands of times in thousands of different ways. People who speak English as a second language, for example, might be more sensitive to such questions. It's like you are saying they stick out or don't quite belong. This won't be true of everyone, of course. On the other hand, like me, Jason Gonzalez, my second language is English, and I don't care if someone asks me where I'm from unless they are comparing me in a despective way with my background, country, or culture. I have been in situations that people guess where I'm from because of my accent, which sounds South American. You can listen right now, and some people just guess my appearance, like France or Italy. Like Colombians, always have the uncomfortable question about the cartels, cocaine, violence, and kidnapping. International people ask me all the time, even if it's safe to go to Colombia. In the past, to be honest, I got mad immediately with these questions. But at the same time, like Colombians, it is my responsibility to change that perspective overseas. So I'm always answering to just try to open the eyes of the people. Look at this, my friend. We had a big problem with drugs and violence in the past. Even I was just a kid when everything happened. Unfortunately, a lot of people die, and like every country around the world, still have problems with violence and drugs. We were weak economically, and all the money of the drugs put the people to dream with mansions and expensive cars. Everything in the wrong way. The money bought our consciousness, political rules, presidents, and control of the country. For one moment, we thought to be the example for the world. I feel sorry for that. We are not even consumers, or with a small percentage of consumers. The big consumers have always been overseas. But right now, Colombia is not the same. The most important change in 2 decades was the transformation of warfare. The weakening of the guerrillas during the governments of Álvaro Uribe 2002-2010, even with the tragedy of the false positives or body counting, and the demobilization of the FARC with Juan Manuel Santos 2010-2018, opened the doors to a different country. Poverty decreased significantly, the condition of women improved significantly, much more than in other Latin American countries. Education grew rapidly and social mobility also seems to have increased. Medellin was listed as one of the 50 best places in the world to visit in 2023, according to Time magazine, one of the most important publications in the United States. In the specific case of Medellin, he valued the task of reducing carbon dioxide emissions, social development or marginalized areas and the poor population, the notable reduction in crime rates, construction of cultural spaces, and the management of public services. Another important element of a successful city is to achieve empowerment on the part of the communities, and a very important lesson is to implement high quality architecture in poor communities, which is very unusual, as well as having such a strong emphasis on education and using libraries as more than just buildings with books, seeing them as a communal centers for community engagement, rebuilding communities and connecting them to the city. The circular garden is also a good example for cities that have expansion problems. It is a great way to contain the city but through inclusive community processes. And yeah, that's where I'm from. I'm proud of that I can tell the story of my city and at the same time my country, Colombia. I know I'm missing a lot of things and cities too, but I can talk if people want to know more about Colombia and your cities in the future. So, now to avoid any offense, and just to try to explain a little bit of all of this context, I'm bringing to you 10 alternatives to ask, where are you from? Yeah. So, to start, I'm going to start with this one. Where is home right now? What is home? Who is home? Who are you? What's your story? And this is really useful. What's your story? Because people, when they're coming to Australia, for example, they have a lot of story behind of them. And it's pretty common that they are coming from maybe hard situations with their families, or maybe in the past is mainly economical reasons to come to Australia. Let's say, for example, like Colombians, yeah, or they are just looking for a better opportunities here in Australia, and that's normal. Maybe it's not if you have enough confidence asking this, you can try, yeah, to avoid any offense. Where have you lived? Where do you grow up? Where were you born? What brings you here? And the last one, I think is pretty interesting, is which place gets deep inside you? Or where do you spend most of your time? Because, when you are going to another country, you bring with you that country, that city. And even if you try for years to change that, I think it's impossible because you have the essence there, you have your family there, you have your past there. It's really hard just to delete it from your life. So I think that's pretty important. I think that's going to help us. If you want to approach someone, I know some people are going to think, oh, this crystal generation, but that's how the world is running right now. And I know it's a different opinions here because some people think that maybe this is too much. Like, while we are worried about this, or it doesn't matter because at the end we are coming from different countries. And but to be honest, I was kind of shocked because I usually go out and talk with the people around of me. Can be a nightclub, can be in the museums, can be in the different scenarios, or just friends of my friends, just to start a conversation like that. And it's pretty common for me, but I'm shocked after all what happened that night with my friend Kevin. And yeah, it's the first person that has a different opinion, has a different attitude. And I would just wanted to share this kind of things with you guys. And please let me know what do you think in the comments. So to conclude, the complex of our human existence takes years and decades to merely understand why we are living in the way that we are living right now, where we come from, and why Sapiens is still figuring out how we can survive every day. The parallel between the origin of the Sapiens brings to us the evolution of the meaning when someone asks, where are you from? And specifically for people who feel more human or less human because of the condition of their parents, grandparents, and family, economic way, or social status. We are the same people. We come from the same origin, and we don't care if you have British blood, African blood, South American blood, or European blood. We have the responsibility to rule this world, and sometimes I feel that we are still stuck in the past, thinking about who has more territory, and we are still fighting about who has better quality of life. That's actually the consequence of the big migrations. So, like Sapiens, how we have to move on in this existence to finish the wars around the world, to finish the judgment of accents, color, skins, identities, religions, or ethnicities. Or can we say it is what it is? I think personally that's too comfortable. Sometimes we have to get out of our comfort zone and see what we can do. Thanks for listening to pocaluzstudio. Please leave the comments or any opinion that you have about this kind of complex topic. Yeah, I'm here to read you. So please follow us on Instagram, pocaluz_studio. If you want to see some of my photography on Instagram too, like JGP, JEIGP. My name is Jason Gonzalez, and I'll wait for you in our next episode of pocaluzstudio. Music by KitKat Artist, a Beat platform.